everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. And today I'm bringing back a guest. He was a guest in January of this year, January of 2021. We talked about his company or his website, dealsfordentists.com. Today we're going to be talking about two other things he's involved in. His new book called The Stress-Free Dentist, and a meeting that he's putting on in October of this year called the Stress-Free Dental Conference. So I would like to welcome back to the Raving Patients Podcast, Dr. Eric Block. Eric, thanks for joining me today.
Len, thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So, Eric, why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you're currently doing, a little bit about your background, so those who are hearing the second episode or who didn't hear the first one can know a little bit about you and what you're currently involved with.
Yeah, Len, so I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm a practicing dentist here, and I went through a tremendous amount of burnout and stress and anxiety related to dentistry, and it got to the point where I really, regretted my place in the profession, and I was thinking about leaving the profession. I was really nervous all the time, stressed all the time. And I just looked at myself in the mirror and I said, this is no way to live. So I decided to make some major changes, and I actually overcame my burnout and stress, and I got back to the point where I enjoy going into work every day. I enjoy doing dentistry every day, and I wanted to share my story of how I did it, what I went through. And I wrote a book actually called The Stress-Free Dentist, which just came out. And you can get that on Amazon or my website, stressfreedentist.com. And I just wanted to tell dentists out there that if they're suffering from anxiety or burnout, that you don't have to go through the false belief that there's nothing you can do about it, because I'm living proof that I'm a general dentist just like you, and I did it, and I enjoy dentistry again.
So as you know, I happen to have written the foreword to the book, so I'm glad it's finally out. But as you know, I actually bought a practice from a dentist who committed suicide. I gutted the building. I redid everything related to the office to make it my own. I was about $18,000 in debt each month for what I did. I wanted to pay it off very quickly, but that caused a lot of undue stress for me as well. Basically, I found a way to get out of the op. That was my way to not have to spend all the time in the office, and I created my own software program, something similar to what you're doing for Deals for Dentists, and that has enabled me over the years to now work two days a week, Mondays and Tuesdays, and the rest of the time I'm now in Florida, where I live. So I was able to change this was over a long time. I bought the practice in 2007, 2012 is when I released my software. And in 2017 is when I went down to 3 and then 2 days a week. But it enabled me to not be as stressed out, because I was living proof as well, and it's not a fun thing to be in. So I think all those people who are listening who feel like they're trapped in the op, there are options you have out there. You just got to think about something. And you did Deals for Dentists. You wrote a book, and now you have a conference in Miami. I think it's October 14th it starts. Or that whatever day it starts during that week.
Yeah, so actually it's called the Get Stress-Free Dentistry Summit, and it is under the umbrella of what used to be called Smiles at Sea, but is now called the Dental Festival. My event is the 14th and 15th of October down in Hollywood Beach, Florida. It's actually at the Diplomat Beach Hotel, and it's going to be all about just how to reduce stress, how to be more efficient, more profitable, enjoy going to work and meeting awesome people and like-minded people. And that's what the summit's going to be all about.
So let's talk about the book first. So you wrote the book, and you talked about your story, the reason that you are in the position you're in, and I think really was opened up to things that not many people knew about you beforehand. So why don't you, for the people listening and watching, because this is being recorded for video purposes as well, why don't you talk about some of the reasons why you were stressed? Because I think that's really important, because I think, as you said, the people listening are going to be dentists. I'm a dentist. We all go through the same stresses, but what specifically was most stressful to you?
Yeah, there's so many reasons, and I found each phase of my career stressful. Obviously, the time in school, then the time associating, deciding after to become a partner in my office or start my own practice, and then finally becoming a practice owner. But really, one of the major issues that I had was I'm an introvert and a people pleaser. So, as you know, dentistry is such a social profession. We have to be on our A game every day with every patient. We can't have a bad day. We always have to be on, and it's very social. So you're in that room with that patient. You have to give them a great experience. You have to wow them. You have to keep them comfortable. Meanwhile, you're doing exhausting procedures. You're staring at this 1 millimeter space for half an hour in an awkward position. Then you got to jump over into the hygiene room and wow that patient and make them feel like they're the only one in the office. So for me, doing this day in, day out, over and over and over again, caused me to have a lot of burnout. And also as a people pleaser, I always wanted to make everyone else happy, and I didn't want to disappoint anyone. I avoided confrontation. I always wanted to be the fun, laid back, cool guy. And I was essentially saying yes to everyone else and no to myself. And eventually, over the years, I started to really internalize a lot of my anxiety, and I just became so nervous all the time at work, and I was so afraid of getting a bad review or a patient not moving forward with treatment or the staff not liking me. And I finally said, you know what, this is no way to practice. There's no way I can do this for another 30 years. So I finally picked up the phone. I called a therapist. I started going through therapy, and I made some major changes. And I really just, most importantly, I got comfortable with myself as an introvert, and I figured out who I was and what made me tick. And I think that was one of the major kind of eureka moments that made me, get over my stresses and anxieties.
It's funny you mentioned having to put on your people person every day and wow patients. I don't think that was the way 15, 20 years ago. I think now with all the dentists who are coming after you from a marketing perspective on Facebook, on Google, you have to do that because you're afraid the patients are going to leave. And I still remember a very poignant point of my career. I was seeing a patient of the old dentist, and I met her a couple of times before, and she literally said to me, and I still remember it, Dr. Tao, why does it? And I'm the happiest guy in the world. I show my emotion on the face, but I'm only a do-gooder. I'm a people person. I offer great customer service, and she said to me, why does it always look like you have a black cloud over your head? And I'm like, excuse me? She said, every time I come in, you look like something's wrong. And I'm like, she said to me, you are so lucky you were able to buy this practice. The doctor left it in a great position. And that made me really think, okay, about it. And that was a very big turning point in my career, in my practice, because I realized I was not necessarily smiling and putting on, this happy-go-lucky, even though I was, something else was bothering me and I wasn't doing it. And now the patient is still in my office. She's been a patient of mine for 15 years almost. And every time I see her, obviously I make sure I go in with the happiest smile, and I always will thank her because she gave me that advice. And it's really taken on a huge change in my career because of it. So it's interesting how that is how you're portraying yourself to the patients when you think you're doing something and you're not. I just found that really important in my career.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had a eureka moment there, and you kind of said to yourself, something's got to change, or it made you realize something about yourself that you didn't even realize what was going on. And I think that's very important, is to have that eureka moment and realize that things aren't going to get better unless you make some changes and first look at yourself in the mirror and realize that there may be an issue.
So you said you decided to take action and you went into therapy, and to deal with, I guess, a lot of the stresses in your career. So if you can give some action items to people who are listening and saying, well, I'm in that same boat, what would you say are the most important things to do? Not everybody's going to be able to, create a software like I did, or create a website for deals like you did, or a book. They don't want to go to those extents. So what are some of the other things you can recommend to the listeners and viewers on what's the best way to deal with these stresses, or the way to alleviate the stresses, I should say?
Yeah, I think that, first realizing that there is a problem. I think that's number one. I'm an introvert, and I was exhausted day in and day out. And by the time I got home, I had I had no gas left in the tank. And I was working through the week just to get to the weekend. And I realized I had to do something. So I think that's really the first step, is to realize there's an issue. And some people may not have an issue and they love going in every day, and it's just how they're wired. Others, like myself, realized they were struggling. And then number two is I took some action. I picked up the phone and I made that phone call, and I called a therapist. And that I had delayed for a very long time, and I wish I had done that much sooner. And that, for someone else may be a coach or a consultant, or reaching out to mentors or peers. But I think reaching out for help is huge. And when I was at, we went to Tulane together. You graduated before me. In fact, we didn't even know each other, but I was a psychology major at Tulane, and because there wasn't a pre-dental or a pre-med major, so I chose psychology because I had to choose something. So I chose psych. So I always knew I wanted to do therapy. I just never got around to doing it, and then I finally felt at some point I had to. So that was a major moment for me.
When did you decide that you wanted to tell your story? Obviously, we both know Laura Brennan well. She went to Tulane. She also had some issues with burnout. She actually quit dentistry, and now she's a coach. But when did you realize you actually had a problem? Okay, obviously you called a therapist, like you said, and then when did you finally take action on these things to improve how you felt? What's the timeline on that?
I'd say it was about 5 or 6 years ago, where it got to the point where I was so nervous all the time, even doing like the simplest procedure, like putting a crown in. I was so nervous that I was going to drop the crown, or wasn't going to seat, and I was going to have to tell the patient that we're going to have to redo this. I also started leaving every day. I was out the door during lunchtime to get out of there. I wasn't going to office functions or birthday parties. I was avoiding certain staff, patients. I was monitoring instead of treating. So with patients, I'd lost that motivation. I would just say, we'll just wash that cavity instead of normally treating it. So that was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I decided to share my story because over the COVID quarantine, I developed a website called dealswithdentist.com, and I was interviewing a lot of dentists, and I was interviewing a lot of dental companies, and I was just really enjoying finding out everyone's story. And I decided to make my own podcast, which is called the Deals for Dentist Podcast. And I realized that a lot of these conversations were, especially with the dentists, were dealing with the anxieties and the stresses of the profession. And I felt like, I could write a book about this, because there's obviously a lot of dentists struggling out there. And I felt like I had a story to tell to help any dentist out there that may be suffering from burnout, or even better, have some young dentists totally avoid it.
How about I'm curious on this one. When you had to wake up in the morning, so I'm in the probably the extreme. I do things I enjoy doing. So I have Bird Eye. I've got my job in my dental office. I have a podcast I do. I have a Facebook group I run. Everything I do it for a reason. I do it because I enjoy doing it. Okay. So when I wake up in the morning, I wake up excited to do what I'm going to do that way. Okay. Today I woke up excited. I had a couple of calls, but I actually am getting new. The in the ceiling, the air conditioning comes out. We bought these modern looking vents that are, instead of the ugly ones, these are really cool looking new ones because we just moved into a new home. So I was waiting for it to arrive today. So I got excited for that today. So everything I do has a purpose involved. So how do you, in your state, when you were not enjoying going to work, you were stressed out, for the littlest things that we think are nothing, you were stressed out by it. How did you feel waking up in the morning?
And also, you were really excited about having this podcast today too. So
sure,
it was the vents and talking to me. So now, like you, I have a lot of other things going on with podcasts. I have Facebook groups as well. I have my website. I'm planning on the summit, and I'm doing a bunch of other things. So, like you said, having other entities or avenues is such a great distraction from the day-to-day stresses of the office. In fact, now when a patient cancels, I'm like, oh, cool, I'll just work on something else. I'll check my emails or work on my website. Whereas in the past, I would have been all bummed out. What happened to that patient? Why did they cancel? Call them back, try to get them in. But back to your earlier question. So now I wake up excited just like you because I have so many things going on. But before I'd be like, oh no, Mrs. Johnson's coming in and she's, got a difficult patient to work on, and I'd be dreading, going in every day. Or I'd look at the schedule the night before and I'd be thinking about it, all night. Or when I used to get home, here's another sign. I could not stop replaying the day over and over in my head. And it was not, the good things. I would be focused on the one or two bad things, like the uncomfortable conversations I had with patients or the one or two procedures that didn't go right. And I wasn't focusing on the 30 great things that happened. So that was, a big struggle I had before I started going through therapy. And also I found a major help for me, and this may not be for other people, but for me, is we started adding in some medications. And once we found the right combination of medications for me, all of a sudden that replaying the day over in my head just disappeared. There was an absence of it. So that was a major moment for me as well.
That's great. So let's talk about the book. What made you write the book? If someone is going to get it on Amazon, what do they look? What is the person who reads it looking to learn? Who is the book ideal for?
Yeah, so it's really for. I wanted it to be like the recipe or the playbook for dentists that are going through a tough time, or young dentists that are just getting out of school and they haven't hit that dose of reality of what real world private practice is like, to give them an idea of what they're in store for. But really to help any dental professional, hygienists, team members, anyone that deals with a dental office, because dentistry is such a complex profession, and hashtag they do not teach us this in dental school. We barely learn the clinical skills coming out of school, and I had no idea how to talk to patients when I came out of school. In fact, in school, you talk over the patient or in about the patient. You don't really know how to communicate with patients. So for me, that took years to perfect. I also go into some clinical tips, but it's really just to help anyone out there. And if maybe just a few things resonate with some of the dentists out there, then that's great. But there's a lot of good stuff in there to hopefully help anyone out there that may be suffering from burnout or anxiety.
Great. So let's switch gears now. Let's talk about your summit that you're having in Miami at the Diplomat. Talk about what someone there would expect to learn. Talk about some of the speakers who are going to be there. I know you have a really good lineup of people talking about things that are near and dear to your heart. So let's switch gears and talk about that now.
I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but we have an awesome keynote speaker that's starting things off by the name of Dr. Len Tao. So I'm actually really looking forward to that, because I don't think you're doing your typical, review lecture. You're going to be changing gears and telling your story, which I think is going to be I'm super excited to hear. But it's a very broad range of speakers. We actually have 21 speakers, and they're going to be talking about, their struggles with burnout. Some people are going to be talking about how to gain financial success in the office, outside of the office, how to deal with stress. We have a marketing and consulting panel of experts that'll be taking some Q&A. I also wanted to get an airway and sleep apnea panel going. So that's going to be one of the highlights as well. And we just have a very broad range of speakers, but it's also just going to be about like-minded people coming together, sharing stories, and finding ways to get back to enjoying dentistry, being more efficient, more profitable, and reducing stress.
So I know you have kind of teamed up here with Elijah, and kind of he is helping you promote it. He's helping you do all these things. You're joining his, I think it's called the Dental Festival. So why don't you talk about some of the other things that people will be able to do at this specific event?
Yeah, that's a good point, Len. So if you get a ticket to my event, the Get Stress-Free Dentistry Summit, you also get a pass to 9 other events that are going on. So I was actually going to do this on my own. And as a full-time practicing dentist, trying to plan an event was like trying to plan a wedding. It was just way too overwhelming for a first-time event planner. So I decided to partner up with Elijah and the Smiles at Sea group, which is now called the Dental Festival. And mine is going to be one of 9 other events going on. So if you get a ticket to my event, which is 2 days, you can also go to the other events as well. And there's just constant socializing, networking events, we all share the exhibitor booth. It's just, and then there's Sunday Fun Day, which is a total blast, which is on Sunday. So I decided to team up with Elijah, who is the master at throwing parties and events, and it's going to be a blast.
And I look forward to, and thank you, by the way, for letting me keynote the event. I'm looking forward to it. The topic, as I told you, is a little different, as you mentioned. This is called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, tips and tricks to live a stress-free dental life. So I'm looking forward to it. It's something very different. So I'm really excited to be there. So let's talk about how can someone how can someone sign up for the event if they want to? How can someone get your book if they want to? And what do you have to offer those who actually are coming to the event if they sign up for it?
Yeah, so you can go to stressfreedentist.com and sign up. You can get my book there as well, or on Amazon. And for those Dr. Len Tao fans who sign up for my summit, they will get an autographed copy of my book. You can also, I have some Facebook groups. I have the Stress-Free Dentistry Facebook group as well. So you can go to all those places, and there'll be a link to sign up.
How does someone indicate that they heard you or heard about the festival or the Stress-Free Dental Summit on this podcast? How will you know who is actually getting an autographed copy of the book?
Yeah, so when you sign up, or if it's on one of my Facebook groups, just send me a comment that you heard it from this podcast. Mention Dr. Len Tao, and that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay, so I know we covered a couple of things. We covered deals for dentists, we covered your book, and we covered the summit. Is there anything else that you wanted to? You have an open mic right now. Is there anything else you want to let the viewers and listeners know?
I just think that, I think that your don't sweat the small stuff is going to set the summit off on such the right foot, because it's so true. It's, don't sweat the small stuff. You want to go into work, happy with what you're doing, the people you're working with, and you also want to have that work-life balance, which can be very hard to do, and it's not easy. I know, for young dentists that are coming out, they're in a boatload of debt, and they just need to start paying off those loans. But you don't have to give in to the false belief that dentistry is just stressful and there's nothing you can do about it. You can, because that's no way to live. You just got to look in the mirror and take some action, and take care of yourself. And also, some tips to some of the young dentists out there is, don't stay in a bad situation too long. If it's not a good associateship, leave. You don't want negativity around you. Try to keep things positive.
Well, I really appreciate you spending some time with me. I know this is a little shorter episode than I normally do, but we already done an episode on deals for dentists, so I felt a shorter episode was warranted here. If you're listening or viewing and you want to get information on the summit, please reach out. You can let me know as well, and I can get you information. But get signed up, get to be able to listen to all the 21 speakers, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 21 speakers, the marketing panel, and then be able to join the other 9 events that are going on as well. So, Eric, thank you so much for allowing me to both keynote the event and write the forward to your book. I really appreciate that. I was very honored and touched when you asked me to do that. And as I always say, as we end these episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Len.